Today is Wednesday, April 5th, year 2000 in Palm Desert, California with Bill Stewart and Don Clark. Bill was a ball turret gunner on B-17s in World War II. Bill, if you tell us please, when and where were you born?
I was born and raised in New York City. I went to school, graduated at St. John's University June 41, and a buddy of mine and I went down to enlist in the Air Force, but we both had some minor physical defects and we were both rejected. We were very unhappy about that. We both wanted very badly to get into the Air Force. Finally the day of reckoning came and the Army grabbed me, and I was a graduate accountant and I was classified with their Army MOS as an accountant. And being the Army what it is, I ended up in the infantry climbing trees like a telephone lineman. Anyway, one day the Air Force came up with an examination for aviation cadets, and I passed the exam, and by a miracle I was able to switch from the infantry to the Air Force. I got into the aviation cadet program, starting out at Maxwell Field, Alabama. I went through that, and the next step was in primary, where we learned how to fly. And I had the thrill of a lifetime when, after 10 hours of instruction, I flew a Stearman. In fact, here's a picture of it on my shirt, the old Stearman. And I soloed and had the thrill of being thrown into the water or a shower, whatever they had to celebrate the solo feat. And that didn't last too long. The next day I was put up for a check ride. What was happening was the old law of supply and demand was setting in, and the Air Force needed gunners. They had enough navigators, bombardiers, and pilots coming through, and so I was elected to be a gunner, and that's what happened. Went to gunnery school, became a ball turret gunner, and trained with my crew, great bunch of guys, in South Dakota, Rapid City, South Dakota. And then we flew our own airplane up to across the ocean to England. And we started flying our combat missions about October of '44. And the timing, excuse me, can you cut it off? So we started flying our combat missions around September of '44, and I flew the ball turret, and after we had completed about 25 missions, one day my waist gunner, Jimmy Porter from Chicago, said to me, Bill, you're almost ready to go home. We have 9 more missions to fly, and you haven't taken any pictures. I said, well, I can't take any pictures with that ball turret. I'm really cramped. In fact, I fly that position only wearing my harness without the chest pack. The chest pack is up and inside the plane. He said, I'll tell you what, he says, let me fly the ball today, and you fly the waist so you can take some pictures. And without hesitation, I said, okay, it's a deal. I was glad to get out of the cramped ball. And I knew he was okay because I had to check everybody on the crew out to make sure they knew how to fly the ball. So we're coming in on a target November 4th, '44. And the target was Merseburg, Germany. We were after their synthetic oil plants. And my bombardier called me up and said, Bill, we're we're dropping a slow train of 250 pounders, get your camera ready. So I said, okay, I'm ready. And no sooner did we finish our conversation, all hell broke loose. The sky blackened with flak. That ugly flak that throws out thousands of pieces of shrapnel and tears up the skin on the airplanes, the aluminum, come back with many holes. And my bombardier wasn't wearing his protective goggles, and he got hit in the eye with some flak and got the Purple Heart. And in the meantime, I had my camera focused out to the left, and all of a sudden, the plane flying off my left wing, about 40 feet off my left wing, got hit by a direct burst of flak, and all hell broke loose. The orange and red flame, and he started going down. I grabbed the shot and ducked behind the armor plate, and began praying like everybody else on the crew that we didn't get hit. Anyway, we made it to the target. We dropped our bombs and went home. When we got back to the debriefing, I turned my film into S2, intelligence, and they said, and then went and hit the chow line, which at that time was down to a reasonable weight. And then I went down to the office to see this picture, and this big 6'4" sergeant says to me, what makes you think I'm going to show you your picture? I said, you SOB. I said, my film, my camera, and you're not going to show me my picture? And I was ready to tangle with him, because I was teed off. And just then a captain walked in from into the office and said, what are you guys fighting about? So the sergeant told him that the picture's been classified secret, and he can't show it to me. I looked at the captain and I said, you know, that picture's up in here in Technicolor for the rest of my life, and he won't show me a lousy black and white picture. So the captain says, let him see the picture. And it was a pretty good picture. It was published in all the papers in the United States and overseas. Can I take a break and need a drink? And this captain was the intelligence officer, and he's also the head of PRO, which I didn't know what it was, the Public Relations Office. And he offered me a job as photographer. And I said, oh no, I'm going to finish up my 9 missions and go home, and, you know, I want to finish up with my crew. He says, well, before you give me an answer, he says, think it over and go around and speak to your crew and get their feelings on it. So I decided to take his advice, and I went around and spoke to every man on the crew, and they all agreed that I should stay and do my photography, because I've been doing it since high school and college, and I enjoy it. So they said they'll get another ball-turret gunner and finish up and go home, you know. So I accepted the job, and it's quite interesting. They had some maybe 5 or 6 fellows in the office, and all of them, most of them were attorneys who were writing these articles, and it was a good morale booster for people at home. For example, I'd go out and make a date with the crew chief and have maybe 30 or 40 of his men show up, and I'd shoot pictures of them all, and usually out of the B-17 with the V for Victory sign, and bring the pictures into the photo lab, and they would process it, and I'd come back to the office with about 9 prints, and the writers in the PRO office would send articles back to the hometown newspapers, typically Joe White, son of Mr. and Mrs. Joe White in Des Moines, Iowa, showing him revving up the planes that dropped their bombs over Germany, and it was really a great morale booster for the people at home to see this being done. And then some of the jobs entailed going out and shooting pictures of weddings and different celebrities coming around to the base. And,
Bill, let me take you back if I could for just a second. You were born in New York City.
Correct.
What was the date that you were born there?
October 4, 1919.
And do you remember what it was like growing up in New York back in those days? Can you tell us a little about that? What your family was like, what your dad did, your mom, brothers or sisters?
Well, life was kind of rough in those days. The dollar then was really worth $1, not what it's now. It's like a penny or a nickel now. I know as a kid, if I wanted any money, I went out and caddied and spend 12, 15 hours getting out to the golf course, and if I was lucky, I got a bag to carry and came back with 75 cents, and that was a day's wages and a day's work for 12, 14 hours. Things got better when I belonged to a social athletic club. About 25 of us were all buddies, went to school at the same time, and we played baseball with the PAL, which is the Police Athletic League, and we did a lot of that. Even played a little tennis. The cost of a summer permit in New York City, playing all summer on clay courts, was $1, and it was a great deal. And then as we grew older, we had what we call basement clubs, where we'd have music and girls and dance, and we were all teenagers, and we had a pretty good time. And
how were you able to finance your university education? That was back in the hard days then, before a lot of federal grants were available for students.
It wasn't easy. I saved some money doing odd jobs, and got some assistance from NYA, New York Assistance, where the city had a deal where you could get 30 hours work in at 50 cents an hour. So I was able to make $15 a month, which I used toward my education. And I even remember what my college education cost me, $1,096. I paid for about half of it, and my folks paid for the other half. And in contrast to then and now, I went to St. John's University in Brooklyn, New York, great basketball team. I was paying $8 per credit, and my grandson went to USC. I asked him one day what he was paying per credit. He said, "Grandpa, are you sitting down?" I says, "Yeah." He says, $500 a credit. So things have changed.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had 2 brothers, and they one was in the Navy and one was in the merchant marine, and it was pretty darn rough on my parents. They were having 3 sons in the service.
Are they older or younger?
They were both older.
Okay.
And I remember when I came home, my dad told me about listening to the news at that time. I think it was Edward R. Murrow, who would start off his program and say, well, we lost another 60 planes today, you know. And my folks would hear that, and not knowing whether I had made it back or not. So I think it was rougher on them, because when I got back from a mission, we knew we were safe and sound, and go see a movie or go into town and have a beer or off and off, and maybe go to a dance. But my folks didn't know where I was and whether I was safe or sound. I think it was rougher on them than it was on me, honestly.
Yeah. What were you doing on December 7th when the news broke that Pearl Harbor had been attacked? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a Sunday evening, and came back from the park. I think I was playing ball and got the news, and we were quite upset, to say the least. I mean, it was kind of a stab in the back technique that the Japs used, and it shook us all up quite a bit. And really changed our lives around.
How long after that did you attempt your enlistment? I think you said that.
I attempted to enlist shortly after that. My buddy and I went down to enlist. We both were ejected for slight medical reasons, and but a few months later they drafted us both, and got into the service at that time.
So you went through gunnery training at Maxwell?
No, Maxwell Field. We went through aviation cadet training. After I washed out of pilot training, I got into gunnery training, and we down in Harlingen, Texas, and it was a good experience.
How long was the gunnery training down there? Do you remember?
Gunnery training was about 3 or 4 months.
And then you went to South Dakota, North Dakota for crew training?
Yeah, then we went to a staging area. I think it was in Nebraska, and the Army selected a crew, put us all together for training, and we did that in Rapid City, South Dakota, which was a great spot to fly over. I still remember flying over the 4 presidents in the mountain.
And then I guess you got a little leave, and then you went overseas.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what air base were you stationed over there?
In London, in England. I was based in Sudbury. I was with the 486 Bomb Group.
And so how long were you there before you had your first combat mission?
About 2 or 3 months. We had some practice missions locally.
When did you arrive over there?
July 4th, 1944. And left July 5th, 1945.
That's a nice rounding off.
Yeah, one year and 1 day.
So you trained for 2 or 3 months, and then you went on your first mission. And can you tell me, if you recall, what it was like on that first mission? What went through your mind when you knew you were going to be in a combat role, and maybe get shot at and injured or worse?
Well, I just felt that we had a job to do, and come hell or high water, we're going to do it. And just prayed that we're going to live through it and do our job.
Yeah. So you then flew another a total of 25 missions?
Yes, 25 in a ball turret and 1 in a waist. So it was a total of 26 missions.
26 missions total.
In fact, after I flew to 26 missions, I took on this job as PRO photographer, and the deal was I was going to fly 1 combat mission a month to make up for the 9 remaining missions. And in order to get your flight pay, which is 50% additional base pay, so one day I went down, I needed the flying time, I went down to sign up for a mission. And the guy says, "What's your name?" I tell him. He says, he checks the list, he come back and says, "You know," he says, "we have so many gunners around here, we don't need them, and we decided to give you credit for a full tour of 35 missions, so you don't have to fly 9 combat missions. You're all done." Man, I felt good. I went out and really celebrated that night. And I imagine it was like some prisoner in jail having 9 more years to go, and the warden coming along and says, "Okay, Merry Christmas, go home. You're all done. No more 9 years." So it was quite a thrill getting that bonus.
So that the last mission you flew then was on the 4th of November, 44.
Correct.
And so you that was the end of it. Did you feel that your military training was adequate or on target or less than adequate? How did you feel about that?
Well, the infantry training, I just as soon forget about. I didn't enjoy climbing trees. But the Air Force training was excellent. I remember one mission, I was down in a ball turret, and all of a sudden I felt like I had a million guys sticking a million pins into my head, and my head started throbbing, and my training and instinct said, "Check things out, there's something wrong." And I had enough strength to look around, and I discovered my oxygen tube had become dislodged from the other tube, and I wasn't getting any oxygen. And you're good for 1 minute up there at 30,000 feet without oxygen, and called an oxy, I believe. And I had enough strength to put the clamps together, and my right hand dropped down to the red button on the bottom, which turned on the emergency supply, and I turned it on, and it sure felt good. In fact, I got too much, and when you get too much, it's like getting drunk real quick. And I came out of it, and I got on the intercom, and I chewed out the whole crew. I said, "What happened to the buddy system today? Who's been checking on me lately, you know?" But anyway, all's well that ends well.
Yeah. When did you actually enter the ball itself? You weren't there for takeoff or landings, I presume?
No.
So you would go in at some later point. When would that be?
When we're leaving the English coast, we'd get into the ball turret, and then I got into the ball turret, and we got over to the channel. We would test fire our guns to make sure they're working properly, and stayed in a ball turret until we dropped our bombs on target, came back home, and then when we hit the coast of France or Germany, whatever it was, coming back over the English Channel, I was able to get out. And most of us would save our oranges that we got in the morning, and when we got back over the English Channel, we cut them open with a knife, and that frozen orange tasted so good. I think Orange Julius might have been in the Air Force when he picked that trick up. Those were good oranges.
There wasn't a lot of room in that turret, was there?
Oh no, they very, very cramped. Some of the little guys were fortunate. They were able to get in and use a backpack. So it was kind of a pillow, and they had their parachute with them. In case anything happened to the trapdoor or something, they could roll out and be on their way with the parachute. But I had no such luck. All I wore was my harness and my chest back. It was impossible to wear it in the wall turret because I had my gun sights in front of me, and there was no room. So my parachute was out in the radio room, close by, in case I would ever need it.
Did you ever wish that you were at a different position in the airplane other than the ball turret? Or were you satisfied performing there?
Everybody was trained for their specific task, and I felt I had good training. I knew what I was doing, and it was a position no one else wanted, so I was stuck with it, but I made the best of it.
Yeah. When you were flying along there and you had on your headset, were you able to monitor communications from outside the aircraft, or just the intercommunication within the aircraft itself?
No, I had no way of monitoring. The only way, I was on the intercom with all my crew.
Okay.
The monitoring was done by perhaps a pilot, a co-pilot, or maybe the radio man.
So they couldn't jam your interphone. The enemy couldn't jam that. It was just the others. Okay.
Excuse me. You just with your use of the word jamming reminds me of another incident. Whenever we went on missions, in order to jam the German radar to mess them up, we took along boxes of silver strips. It was called chaff, and it was up to the tail gunner in the back to dump the stuff through a tube, and it floated down the ground and mess up their radar. And my tail gunner was a farmer from Northern California. His name was Clem, 6'2", very quiet, very unassuming. Never had much to say, but one day he cut it on the intercom, and he broke us all up. He had to go potty, and he took one of these empty cardboard boxes. He did his duty, he shoved it overboard. He said, "Well, fellas, I finally did it on Germany." Can we take a cut? Pretty please?
Okay.
Okay, it's flicking red. Is that what it's supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That means that. Let's see. Now you were coming back from a mission. You'd get out of the turret at about the time you got back in, I guess, safe territory around the English coast. What kind of experience did you have with the fighter escorts on your missions, and do you think that they were as necessary as some people have thought? You know, the P-47s, the P-51s.
The pilots that flew the P-47s and the P-51s were unbelievable. They were great. I wouldn't be sitting here talking now if those guys weren't up to snuff. especially when the P-51s had the new tanks put on, where it extended their range and they were able to give us more mileage on escorting us to the target. And we had a lot of good fighter protection. Our worst enemy was the flak. Some of those gunners, German gunners, were masters. I mean, they were really, really good at it. And that flak is real dangerous. In fact, there's a flak gun out in front of the Air Museum now. It's an old 88. And
You were at a stopping point? I'm gonna go to Rouse.
there it is, yeah.
The escort, and after they got their tanks, they were drop tanks, they were able to extend the range.
Right.
Gave you a lot of help getting there and back. Let me ask you this, Bill. Do you remember, you know, your crew members? Do you guys ever get together or
Oh,
ever
yes.
talk to them or anything like that?
My pilot and I just found each other after 50 years. He moved from Kentucky to South Carolina, and I moved from New York to California, so we missed each other. But through the use of computers, we finally located each other, and I called him, and we hadn't spoken to each other in 50 years. It was quite a reunion over the telephone. And then we've seen each other on recent bomb group conventions, and the man that took my place, who replaced me as a ball turret gunner, was there too. Tony Gershia from Brooklyn.
Another Brooklyn night.
Yeah. And yeah, we keep in touch.
You attend reunions ever?
Yes, we attended one recently in Savannah, Georgia, where it happened to be the home of the 8th Air Force Museum, which was quite a thrill to be there and see it.
I guess. What about your life after the war? When you returned in July of '45, how long before you were demobilized or turned loose from the Air Force?
I was discharged in September of '45, and all the time that I was away from New York, I kept saying, boy, there's no place like New York. And when I got back after I was discharged, I couldn't stand the town. I said, I'm going to California. But in the meantime, I had met this gal who we dated for about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, and I decided to break loose for California. And I came out to California about November of '45. In December, I called Pearl and proposed. He says, come on out to California and get married. She said, oh no, you come back to Brooklyn and get married. So I went back to Brooklyn. Got married, then came back to California. At that time, I was working for an accountant, and he got excited when he heard I wanted 2 weeks off. He says, what are you, crazy? You work 3 weeks, you want 2 weeks off? I said, I don't like your tone of voice, I quit. He said, wait a minute. He says, how come you want to go to New York? I said, I want to go get married. He said, will you be back for the tax season? I said, yeah, I'll be back for the income tax season. Which started off with my first tax return I did was for Hoot Gibson. And he walked in bow-legged. He was so bow-legged he looked like he still had a horse underneath his legs. It was a great experience doing his tax return.
And so you settled then in what town? When you got married, came back?
We bought our first house in San Fernando Valley, Reseda, California. And then I had to get to work, and make some money to support a family. So I was an accountant and I worked for an oil company, and after a while I wanted to get into income taxes, so I got a job with the California State Franchise Tax Board doing income tax audits, and it was quite an experience. More experiences than I got going to college. I mean, meeting people, seeing different sets of books, listening to different approaches, and it was 6 or 7 years I stayed there, well spent. Then one day I realized I wasn't getting too far, so I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to break away and go into business for myself, which I did, and we ate beans for about the first year or so, but then things started picking up and had more and more accounts. It got to be better known, and we then moved to Monterey Park, lived there for about 20 years, brought my son and my daughter up there, and there were chips off the old block. They took to tennis, and they were on the tennis teams, and we became traveling with the tennis leagues, watching them play in tournaments. And then we moved to Pacific Palisades, which is a beautiful area up off of near Malibu, in the hills, near the ocean. And we really enjoyed that area. And then finally came the day when, trying to be 65, I said, okay, now's the time to retire. So we sold out Pacific Palisades and came down to Palm Springs. And my son had bought a business in Palm Springs, so we came down to help. But it didn't work out that way. I came down with cancer, and I had 29 treatments of lymphoma. But I'm a survivor, and I'm still here. We beat it.
Yeah. Bill, how would you say that your wartime experiences influenced your life? If you can even say that, or you know, I'm sure you've thought about it a lot because you spent a number of years of your life as a young man service to your country in a dangerous profession, and you survived it. You got to come back. You met Pearl, got married, had the American life, you know, that we talk about. How did doing what you did influence your life? Doing what you did in the war.
Well, the only thing has happened is I carry good memories and bad memories, and I'm thankful for having lived through the experience of everything I've done, and I feel that I've gained a lot from the experience, and appreciate life and what it has to offer.
I know you've got a memento of your military life on the back of the chair there. I wonder if you would model that for us.
Sure, this is my jacket, A2 jacket. This is the back of it. Shack job with 26 bombs, one for each mission. I have to tell you about shack job. The plane was named after my bombardier, who went out on practice missions and get the shack in the middle of the bullseye, and we called him shack job. But then he was also good at the other stuff too. And yeah, the jacket still fits me. And one rainy night in England, I drew a picture of my dream girl Then I met her, and we got married. It's been over 54 years ago. And I also have another memento called my short snorter. My short snorter is when you fly overseas, every member of the crew signs a dollar bill, and if you ever come across anybody that's flown overseas and you ask him if he's a short snorter and he doesn't have his dollar bill with him, then he either owes you a drink or has to give you $1. So over the years, I've accumulated bills from all the foreign countries, and it is now 14 feet long. Don and I measured it a few minutes ago, and it's a great souvenir I have, and quite a conversation piece. And I have signatures. One night I went down to the USO in New York, and all the actors and actresses were there, and I got signatures from Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Martha Ray, and a bunch of other people. I don't remember, but it's a nice souvenir. I enjoy it. I'm running out of souvenirs, Don.
Okay.
There it is. It's on now. Okay, I'm 80 years old. I've been smoking a pipe since I was 17 years old, and I'm not quitting. But I must tell you about one mission that I was on. It was 2 days after the war ended in Europe, May 9th, 1945. The instructions were to get every airplane off the ground that could fly for a victory sweep over Europe. The night before the mission, I got drunk with some kid from Texas. And I said, Tex, I said, when we get over Paris, I said, I want you to fly low. I want to take a portrait of the guy selling tickets under the Eiffel Tower. He said, okay, you got a deal. So we took off for this mission, and I sat up in the nose of the plane, not in the ball turret, in the nose of the plane, the sunshine pouring down, and I had my pipe lit, something I could not do in the ball turret. And I was in seventh heaven. We flew over the Rhine River, and I could practically reach out and touch both sides of the mountains on the top of the river. And we really enjoyed this mission. It was a thrill. When we got over Paris, I've got a picture, believe it or not, pointing up at the Eiffel Tower. And I was close enough to see some gal, French gal, hanging out the window, and she was going like this. I didn't know whether she meant V for victory or she was charging 2 francs. Anyway, we flew over some beautiful looking tennis courts where they now play the French Open, Golan, Roland, something like that. And that was a mission that I shall long remember. We got back safe and sound, no flak or anything like that. It was a beautiful mission to be on. Thank God I made it.